where we explore the most groundbreaking developments in technology and innovation and discuss what it will take for India to become a leader in these fields. Now, if you'd like to hear about the next part of the series, make sure that you sign up for our newsletter on the link below. But before we get started, let me tell you a little about this series and why it was started. Over the past 2 decades, we've seen a number of positive trends in the fields of science and technology in India, with cutting-edge technology being developed here. We've also noticed a few exciting breakouts in entrepreneurship and innovation in India, with more and more graduates wanting to pursue the entrepreneurial path. However, these instances remain more like exceptions than the rule. Though India has the potential to create new technologies and world-class innovations, one of the biggest barriers we've seen is the lack of an appropriate ecosystem that accelerates innovation from India. Now, in order to generate greater awareness about new technological innovations, this series of discussions titled World Class from India, where we explore the most groundbreaking developments in technology and innovation with our panelists, who are experts and thought leaders, and we have a lot of them today, in fields as diverse as energy, mobility, healthcare, computing, genetics, space science, and more. Through these discussions, we will accomplish 2 things. First, we hope to learn about the forefront of research in their fields, about what is exciting in these fields that have the potential to disrupt the way we lead our lives. And second, we will explore the question of whether India can become the source of many of these disruptive innovations and technologies. And if so, what will it take for young Indians, entrepreneurs, and engineers to revolutionize these fields? Now, today in the first part of the series, we'll be discussing a field that is increasingly relevant in all of our lives: transportation and mobility. Specifically, we've curated a panel of experts to discuss with us what the future of mobility holds. They will share with us the exciting developments in their field and what the future has to offer, from new technologies under development that could completely redefine the car as we know it. Now, we've got things such as connected cars, artificial intelligence integration, driverless cars, alternate fuels, endless possibilities that have yet to be imagined. Our panelists will also be sharing with us what Indian engineers and entrepreneurs can do to revolutionize this space. Now, I'd like to introduce the panelists. I have with me Chetan Maini, who is the CEO of Mahindra Riva. Now, Chetan, your introduction can just go on and on, but I'd just like to introduce you to as the father of electric mobility in India. I've known Chetan, I think, since 2000 when we first met, and I saw the Riva then, and it was really a car ahead of its time. So Chetan really is at the forefront. He's got a lot of firsts to his credit in this field, and clearly, I think even 10 years on, the Riva is India's first and only all-electric vehicle. So Chetan, over to you.
Thanks, Hormazd. Thanks for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be on this Google Hangout. I think as we really think of the future of mobility, what we're really seeing today is where consumers are going, where technology is going, where energy and emissions are going, is making a shift in where we see the 200-year-old DNA of the auto industry. So what we're talking about is a move that was completely different from things that were mechanically controlled to going electronically, from energy, which was probably driven on gaseous fuels of CNG and petroleum, to probably moving towards hydrogen and pure electricity to power cars. We're talking of vehicles that were probably completely standalone to being fully connected and being part of an ecosystem that looks at things very differently as we take this forward. We're looking at ownership changes from where today people bought cars to people looking at solutions on how they can be part of a virtual mobility organization and trying to see how their transportation requirements could be very different as you look at it. And of course, through all of this comes a level of areas of change and technology from being mechanically to complete electronics and software driven. So this is a shift the industry probably has never seen before. And I think with this comes a set of opportunities and ideas. It's about collaboration across segments, across areas, which necessarily technology hasn't come from the auto industry. You, in the past, had a smartphone, had a phone, and had a computer, and they came back and then became a smartphone. And today, it's part of your life. You put an automobile to that aspect, and then you get another shift of how you look at changes. So these changes are necessarily not coming from the same industry. And I think the exciting part of where the future mobility holds is a culmination of all of this coming together. Very broadly, for me, it's divided at that area of, can the future mobility be a lot cleaner? Can it be far more convenient? Can it be far more clever? Can it be far more cost-effective? And can it be far more connected? And these 5 C's, if you look at what the lives are, if they can become part of where you're looking at it, then I think we can see a change. When I think clean entire life cycle of how you would use it, to how you would make it, to the end of life. How can they be much more? So from electric cars, to energy being used on solar, to the way you build these vehicles need to be far cleaner, and transportation solution. When we think of convenience, I think this is the #1 area that all customers look for in terms of how you'd purchase your cars. So from online purchasing to ownership that would be virtual. Today, most of people in Paris are using electric cars to get around. And companies like Autolib are allowing you to have virtual mobility, where it's quicker to take a car than go to a subway station. Over 10 million users by probably 2016 in US and Europe would probably be part of car share. So we're going to see a shift in what is seen as convenience in areas of transportation on this area. When we think connected, it's again going to be a big move into looking at this front. And when I think connected, it's several areas. It's connected between you and your car, and that's why your smartphone. Simple things like turning on your air conditioning to probably giving you an emergency amount of charge, seeing where you need to go. It's connectivity between car and car, bringing in a next level of safety systems in place, which is very critical, especially in markets like India. It's about connectivity between you and the infrastructure by looking at where traffic management would come in and the idea of optimizing a set of products going around and looking at connectivity there. We're talking of connectivity between you and the grid, where energy can come into your vehicle, and when when the grid is weak, actually cars can power back the grid. We talked about problems that we had in Delhi a couple of years ago when the whole grid came down. Imagine if 100,000 cars could probably put 1,000 megawatts of power in and power the grid back. And at 2 in the morning, when energy is very inexpensive, as well as in surplus, we charge vehicles back. So it's no more about being independent. It's about connectivity across communication, across energy, and taking this to a completely different level. Today, everything has computers, and so the sea of connectivity and clever comes together. And today, as you look at Google being able to cross a country on a driverless car, the semi-autonomous to autonomous driving systems are going to be a big shift in what clever comes in. Remote diagnostic capabilities of accessing your car, fixing it remotely without even you knowing it, are going to be things that are today available, even in products that we have. So the cleverness of everything we want is going to be a very important part of our life. For India especially, or world, it's great to have all of these C's, but unless it's cost effective, it's not going to make sense. So integrating these 5 C's, I think, are going to be the drivers of how I look at the future mobility in every aspect of where we're talking about. If I look at technology today, you have electric cars. They can go 300 plus kilometers. They can run on clean energy on one side. You've got cars that can cross countries on driverless. So you have all of these technologies available. You think of what your app has been able to do on a phone. The main computer system is one part of it, but people are able to do so much more by integrating this to other systems. So what you're starting to see is a first level of core technologies available, and the power is going to come when all of these connect together in a much bigger way. And I think that's when we're going to see some fundamental changes in how mobility would be seen. But given where it is, the future looks really good. Let's take energy for an example. And today, if I look at battery electric cars, you have energy densities of around maybe 200 watt-hours per kg. New battery technology is coming out at 1,000. What does that mean to an average user? Probably a 50 to 75 kilogram battery pack in a small car the size of a gasoline tank can probably take you 500 kilometers. If you look at charging times, they used to be 8 hours, they're 1 hour, now they're 30 minutes. New systems are coming up between 5 and 15 minutes. So now over a cup of coffee, you can get 500 kilometers, probably similar to what you're looking at other equivalents. These radical shifts will rethink the way energy is looking at it. If we today see a challenge within the auto space, 80 to 85% of India's imports are coming through petroleum. And it's a key part of what's looking at both from an emission perspective as well as from an energy security perspective. Now, a simple solution of a 2 meter by 4 meter solar panel attached to your house or outside your work can give you free energy for life for the next 30 years. That's the power of what this energy can do, of solar energy that we have today. Imagine we're today in Bangalore. If 1% of our area was covered, this would be enough to power 1 million electric cars, energy-free. Now, this is the fundamental shift where it's not just about the transportation, but we need to bring in the energy and we need to bring the impact of society into these equations as we think of the future of mobility and how this is going to look at it. In this entire thing, I see the India opportunity very big. I think our requirements in India are very different from globally. Our solutions need to be a lot more frugal. The culmination of different technologies gives India an advantage. We're talking about society that's going to be driven far more on software and electronics. And that's an inherent strength that we have today in India. And unlike other areas where people have been doing things for the last 100 years, here's an area where all the stuff you're doing is in the last 10 years. So there's no one really who has global advantage on this area. And so therefore, like India has played a role on software, I think there can be a leadership activity on the energy side, on the software space, on looking at integration of complex algorithms and seeing what this happens and how we can take this through. And I think as we thought of this area and the RISE challenge of saying, can we get an affordable driverless car in India? With a different solution. We don't need to go at 150 kilometers per hour on freeways. But if you're going to work or you're going to shop, it's crazy finding parking. Can I get off there and the last 300 meters can the car park itself? Can it bring it back to you when you want to go? Can you make sure that as you're going through the requirements of pedestrians and the multi-mode transportation solutions in India, how would you take care of that? Can you think of different algorithms in terms of managing that activity? So I think where we have an opportunity in these new spaces is to rethink how technology would be, to rethink the way of how these could integrate and make a difference in people's lives. And there I feel that with Indian engineering capability, there would be a big advantage in putting this together. For me, Hormazd, it's about the culmination of this coming down. It's about me walking down one day and saying, hey, I want to get to work, and I get to work 30% faster because it's connected me to my subway or to a virtual mobility electric car or to a way of communication that says this is the best way to get from point A to point B, making my life more convenient. It's done by me not spending any new energy and using renewable energies from getting from point A to point B. It's done in a far more safe manner because of the connectivity I have. It's done that while I'm taking this journey, my life is more productive. I decide to use the third space, either in an entertaining way or productive way, depending what I feel that day coming in or out. And most of all, if I'm able to engage all these facilities together and optimize both the asset utilization by a set of virtual mobility and energy, finally we could get cost effectiveness. And I think that, to me, would be a winning situation as we think of where the future mobility holds.
Thanks a lot, Chetan. That's really interesting, and clearly, you've shared with us really how the world has gone so far, the auto world has gone so far forward. I mean, stuff that we could only dream of, especially things like driverless cars. But clearly, there are issues, especially in the Indian context, cost effectiveness, and even the infrastructure. So I'm going to get back to you with some questions, but before that, I'd just like to move to our next panelist. We've got Akshay Mani with us. Akshay is the project manager, research and practice at Embark India. He's also the lead author of Sustainable Transport in India and the role of the auto rickshaw sector. So Akshay, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Hormazd. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, very clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great to have to be a part of this panel, and it's clearly, as Chetan mentioned, technology is clearly going to drive a lot of our sort of solutions with respect to urban mobility. And what we are doing at Embark India is also to look at promoting sustainable urban transport solutions, which bring all the pieces together when we talk of urban mobility, whether it's the redefining the role of the car, and also how does it play together with the other modes of transport, public transport, walking, cycling, and intermediate public transport as well. So what I thought I could sort of highlight a little bit is, where do we want to see our urban mobility architecture, right, in our cities, and what kind of systems do we want in place, considering the role of the car and also the other modes of transport. And what we have been talking about quite a bit at Embark India is looking at multimodal integration, where all the different modes sort of play together, and how do they integrate, technology being a core part of that. And within multimodal integration, we have been looking at sort of public transport playing the core, the core system, and all the other modes sort of playing, working together with public transport, because clearly, if we want to promote sustainable urban transport, we have to figure out how do we move the maximum number of people in a more sustainable way, and with that achieve economic productivity of cities, environmental friendliness, and also social inclusiveness, which is a very important aspect of sustainability. So within that, I think the clear the things which are going to be very critical are going to be, one is the policy, where how does the public sector, starting from the Ministry of Urban Development, create the right kind of policy. And we already have the National Urban Transport Policy, which clearly talks about promoting movement of people, and making that as the core aspect. And then the other pieces of technology, finance, and the institutional arrangements. And I think the role of both the public and the private sector is going to be critical in achieving the objective of sustainable urban transport. So the public sector is going to invest in big infrastructure projects like metro and BRT, while at the same time, the private sector also is coming up with more frugal solutions, as Chetan was talking about. What we are seeing in the taxi industry and the auto rickshaw industry with Uber and other services like Ola cabs, which are clearly technology companies trying to create solutions which utilize excess capacity in the system and optimize services for customers. And I think within technology, if I could just briefly talk about a few things, I would say one is technology related to vehicles. So we have electric technology, we have technology which promotes fuel efficiency and things like that. And I think the other piece of technology is how to integrate different modes. So if you look at public transport, you have technology with respect to automated fare collection systems. You have user information systems which promote multimodal user information for passengers. Clearly, a lot of it is happening in the West, but I think there is a big opportunity for entrepreneurs to look into that space when it comes to user information and big data technology, things like that. And I think the other big piece of the technology is in the bus industry also, where hybrid buses, electric buses, it clearly is going to make the bus industry more fuel efficient, while at the same time promoting the larger sustainable urban transport driven by public transport being the core of it. So I think it's an exciting time in India right now. A lot of entrepreneurs are really looking at promoting sustainable urban transport solutions, technology being a core part of it. And I think the big opportunity is for the public and the private sector to work together and come up with the solutions which are required for us to move ahead. And we clearly have the talent, we have the finance available. There are a lot of investors who are really interested in this space. And I think also the civil society and research organizations are also giving in the capacity required. So all the pieces are coming together, and it's a really exciting time. And I also think that what Mahindra is doing with the Mahindra Rise initiative is clearly bringing experts together and making sure that we are having this conversation, and bringing wider visibility to what is required. So thanks again, and I'm looking forward to hearing the insights from the other panelists as well.
Thanks, Akshay. Thanks for sharing that with us. And clearly, the whole multimodal transport integration, a huge challenge as well as a huge opportunity, which requires policy, public sector, private sector, all pulling in the same direction. So, going to get back to you as well after we go through our round of panelists. Next, we've got Srivatsan Mohan from Bangalore. Now, Srivatsan is the technical co-founder of Ridingo, and I think his what he wants to do is really introduce car sharing in India. That's his goal, is to create the future of shared transport in developing economies like India, Southeast Asia, South America. So that's really quite interesting, Srivatsan, and look forward to hearing from you on this.
Thanks, Hormazd. I mean, I'm sure that Chetan has covered a lot of wide, diverse areas where there are a lot of interesting stuff happening. But from a technology entrepreneur's perspective, I'll give you like 2 or 3 areas where I look at and I see huge potential in the next few days, next few years maybe. One, of course, is where we ourselves are deeply into, which is the sharing economy. Personal transport on a large scale has been the trend for the past 100 years. But if you look at it from a mass system, it's a very inefficient system because personal transport is primarily pegged on ownership of vehicles. And these vehicles are basically idle when they are not used. And this is the fundamental problem that sharing economy is trying to solve. It is, if you want a common analogy, people earlier in cities were having individual houses which used to occupy a set of area, and now they are moving to apartments in order to more efficiently occupy the same amount of area. So sharing economy is the fundamental one is to improve the efficiency, and the other one is to create an on-demand system. I mean, you use a particular resource only when you need it. Otherwise, the resource is given back to the free pool, and it is used by someone else. And this facilitates a lot of things like non-ownership. I mean, you don't need to have a huge capital investment into buying your vehicles. You don't need to spend a lot on the fuel and a lot more. And you also optimize the road transport by fitting in more people into these private vehicles. I would like to actually give you some examples also, like examples like Lyft and Sidecar, which are there in the emerging, which are there in the economies like US and Europe, which are basically trying to make privately owned vehicles into taxis. So if you have like a vehicle and you have free time, you can just ferry people around and make some money. This, though it sounds like a very simple thing, it's a huge thing for the whole economy because the person who owns the vehicle is not taking the burden of it, and the person who does not own the vehicle is not now stranded. So there are no more vehicles being added to the system, and at the end of the day, people end up commuting at the same cost or at lesser cost, in more often than not. And we as Ridingo, we also do it for emerging economies where we want to share fuel expenses among people who commute. There are also car sharing. I mean, the earlier examples were for ride sharing. There are also car sharing examples where there are cars parked in prominent places. Companies like Zipcar and Zoomcar in India, they solve the problem of ownership where you can rent a car only when you need it. It's all on demand. So this is a huge hope that I see, and I'm seeing that there is a lot of investment happening here. Companies like Lyft and Uber, they have got billion-dollar valuations also from large investors. So this is one area. The second area that I'm really interested in, intelligent connected transport, which Chetan already covered in his topic, but I would like to go deep into it. So it would be great if cars can act as on-road sensors. Cars can act as on-road agents for people to collect data from the roads. So this data can be as trivial as how the traffic is and as complex as how the road is. Or how the transportation flow pattern is. So cars can actually feed this data back to the grid where a big data analytics engine can process it, and this can lead to a huge macroeconomic change where instead of having people looking at actual traffic, they can look at the traffic data in order to optimize their routes. So in order to optimize, like say, signal time, how big should a signal be? This can be fed in with the help of cars or with the help of type of transport that's going in. So intelligent and connected transport is again a huge area of interest. This again has huge, I mean, India can invest a lot in this because of the software expertise that India can bring in, because this is primarily data analytics and stuff like that. Google has been pioneering in this with the help of Google Now, and Google acquired a company named Waze, which collects data from multiple sources in order to create a huge data chunk that they can analyze and then suggest traffic flows and things like that. The third major thing that I would like to actually stress on is safety systems. Driverless cars are there. I mean, that's the dream, but I'm sure that will take at least the next 50 to 60 years to reach all people. And I'm sure that India, as an emerging country, will have a huge number of cars with drivers, and these drivers are still going to be crazy. I mean, you know how Indian drivers are. So we can have safety systems that can help drivers make less mistakes, use sensors, and as simple as have something like a mobile phone camera. I mean, nowadays people use their smartphones, and smartphones as their GPS systems. And how well can you use this smartphone? If you look at it, companies like Mercedes-Benz is investing a lot in safety systems, but I, as an Indian entrepreneur, feel that that's a little out of our reach, and this is where I call on board. I mean, all the emerging entrepreneurs in India, and build systems that can fit into a phone, or that can fit into some cost point that can be purchased in India. Something as simple as there was a company that was recently acquired by Harman, the automobile speaker specialist, and this was basically using the front and the back cameras on your phone to detect whether you are going off the road. This is as simple as it is. I mean, you just plug in your phone on your GPS slot, and you look at the map, and when you are going out of the lane, it will automatically alert you. This can single-handedly save so many lives. Things like alertness detectors. How can you use a simple Bluetooth dongle which you connect to your ears, and when you are driving wherever you go, and how can that use to alert people? There are people investing a lot of effort and time into it. That would also be a great sense of interest for me.
Thanks, Srivatsan. Really interesting. I liked some of your concepts, especially your idea of turning private cars into taxis. Not sure the taxi unions would deal with that, but again, going to come back to you, after we've done our round. And I'd like to introduce our next panelist, who's Ankur Bhatnagar. He's the Vice President of Skytrain India. Now, the system was co-developed by engineers from NASA, and Skytrain, a privately held company based at NASA. In Mountain View, California, and apart from Israel, they have a project coming up in Kerala. So it's a view on innovative mass transport, and Ankur, we'd really like to hear from you on this. Oh, sorry, Ankur is offline. Okay, if we can go to the next panelist, then we've got. Shirish? Yeah, Shirish is there. Yeah, Shirish is the head of Infotronics Technology at Mahindra & Mahindra. He's been the speaker at the Automotive World Megatrends, the Connected Car Summit in 2014, and he currently leads the Connected Vehicle Program at Mahindra. So, a very interesting topic on connected cars. Shirish, so let's hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Hormazd. It's glad to be on this hangout, and to set the context, I think Chetan gave a very good framework of the 5 C's, what he's talking about, and connectivity becomes one of the essential element in the entire 5 C's what come across. Now, when I look at the whole scenario, especially in the Indian context, I just like to share a reflection what we see as the development is happening in India. So if you look at some time back, a lot of industrialization happened, and people from the rural areas were migrating to the urban, and then basically looking for work and looking for employment. And this is what where the urban bust happened, and the sudden growth in the urban areas started, which also implicitly means the need for mobility, the need for the transportation has exponentially increased over a period of time. Now, if you look at the cycle now, what is happening is all the companies which are there, because of so much of crowding in the urban areas, they are moving to the outside periphery, which is again putting a stress on the need for the mobility in the context where from the cities now you have to go outside to work and come back. And this is a kind of a cycle which is coming in the society. And as more and more development happens, I see it's going to kind of go in different kind of loops in this. Now, coming to the context of the mobility, where I see going into future, there's a lot of things which are coming across. One specific to India, we have a lot of socio-economic factors where people are looking in two major things. One is the mass mobility part, where like the other panelists spoke about, and then in terms of the personal mobility. The personal mobility is still ruled with the expectation of a lifestyle and the expectation of your comfort and convenience, and then to make sure that your work commute and then wherever you want to go around, it is as safe and as simple as possible. Okay, and mass transportation, of course, there are different challenges which government is trying to put across. A lot of forums are trying to propose solutions. And this is where I think a very important aspect of how we are using technology to make it make our lives more convenient and make it more comfortable and safe. That is playing a major role. Just to draw a parallel, if you see some time back, communication was seen as a need, but it was not a necessity kind of a thing. But with the advent of the mobile phones in India, today if you see even a guy on the street who is at the very lower level of the economic strata is also so much dependent on the mobile phone today that it has become an essential part of their life, without which they cannot do or move anything at all. And going ahead, I see the need for mobility also in terms of not exactly in terms of ownership of a vehicle, but in terms of getting that kind of a facility to move across, to move more conveniently, will become the essential need for everyone in the society. And the technology, the way it is leapfrogging, we cannot say today that, okay, today in the next horizon we are looking at, let us say, a specific technology coming in. Today the mobile phones is there. The mobile phones is going to help in terms of connectivity to a certain extent to provide this kind of comfort and convenience. But going ahead, if you see the trend in the mobile industry now, everybody is talking of moving away from the mobile device, and it's coming out of the wearable devices. And if you look at a little beyond in terms of the way the technology is evolving, we are already seeing trends where the biotechnologies and then the electronics and the biofusion is happening, and then people already experimenting on infusing these electronics inside the people so that all those information and then the intelligence content is coming as a part of you, and you don't have to carry additional things. I think it's going to be a very complex scenario envisioning the future, or it's, for me, it looks more like a fiction, how this thing is going to evolve. And there's a lot of things parallelly come from the fiction to the real world. Yeah? And now, in the current context, now what happens is when we are talking of a connected technologies here, a lot of things also depend on the socio-economic factors. In India, for example, now there is a big divide between the urban and the rural world, what we have. In the urban, people are more technology savvy, and then the need is more towards making it more sophisticated for them, how their lifestyle needs are going to met. But in the rural area, when you look at it, is more for them, for their own development, for them do business, for their own growth. So these are the two buckets where I see the technology playing an important role. And as a technology leaders in the industry, what we have to look at is how can we make it more socially relevant, and how can we bring it to the context that everybody is moving on the same plane. Because if you look at the developed worlds, what happens is, even if you're in a big city or a tier 2 or a tier 3, you won't feel so much of a difference in terms of the lifestyle which is going to be met. And I think as going ahead in India, if that kind of a development is achieved, where whether you're in Bangalore, whether you're in Delhi, or whether you're in a small village outside in the outskirts, your lifestyle needs are almost being met at the same level. So that is where the technology will play a great role coming into future. And specifically talking about cars, we talk of connected cars and things moving in the direction where already a lot of things are being used today. For example, on the fleet side, we talk of telematics, and then on the personal front, you talk of a lot of infotainment, and then a lot of connectivity to the external world, where Chetan also mentioned about looking inside the car, how the vehicle health is happening. So all those applications are there in the market today. And going ahead, we're talking of bringing in more autonomous vehicles, perhaps from the angle of bringing more safe and very secure and reliable transport kind of a thing. Yeah. And when we talk of autonomous cars here, again, a lot of things which depend on the software part, which is going to drive the things. And India being one of the leaders in the IT industry, I think the trend in the IT, which has moved from just offering services alone to being a knowledge hub, I think that is what we can leverage excellently, in a very excellent manner, where these brains can be put together to bring in a more socio-economic change, where the technology adoption also can leapfrog and then exponentially rise in the industry. And not only limited to the cars alone, cars is just a means of transport, the way I look at it, for the mobility. Now, there are different forms of mobility which will come across as we go into the future, and then these are the technologies which is going to make a difference. And then a lot of colleagues on the panel here also are giving different perspectives on how we foresee in terms of the different features or the different aspects coming into the changing the lifestyle of the people. I think this is the crux of the whole stuff for me. Yeah.
Thanks, Shirish. I couldn't agree with you more on the importance of connectivity. In fact, what we found is that today, the young generation, they get into their car, the first thing they do is they pair their phone before they even put on their seatbelt. So clearly the importance of connectivity, infotainment, all that is there. But also there's the issue of driver distraction. Perhaps, I want to come back to you later to talk about some of these issues. But before that, I'd like to move on to our last panelist, who is Fahad Azad. Now, Fahad is the innovator, founder of Robosoft Systems. He's been featured by top Indian innovators under 35 in the MIT's Technology Review list, and he's participated in the InRobo 2014 conference. So, Fahad, let's hear your take on the robotics, application in today's world of cars.
So actually my background is from automotive engineering, and then I shifted to robotics while I was studying in engineering. What I've seen in the 10 years is how the size of the processor is being reduced, and now it's available on our smartphone, and the processing speed is increasing 10x what happened last year. So this is enabling automation of things at a pace which we did not even imagine. So like 10 years ago, DARPA released a challenge where you had to make an autonomous car which would travel like 200 miles in Nevada desert from point A to B, and that point of time none of the universities could complete the challenge. And in 2005 there was Stanford and CMU who could do the challenge, and today you have the same team in Google who is using the Google car. Now autonomous car is a pretty fad thing which we have seen, but autonomous vehicles moving in our world is something not.
I think we seem to have lost the audio. Try and get Fahad back on. We're just trying to get Fahad back online. Seems to be a slight drop. So if you can just bear with us for a few minutes, we're just trying to sort this out.
You can get Chetan's view on till then.
Yeah, okay. While we're waiting for Fahad to get back on, Chetan, I just like to, come back to you and what you'd spoken about. Clearly for the connectivity levels you're talking about I want to refer to the Indian context and cost effectiveness and the infrastructure. Do you think these are the real biggest challenges in the Indian context? Because or is it also policy? There's not really a clear-cut policy on really promoting the new age of technology that we are seeing in cars.
I do think the policy is an important area, and in terms of electric mobility, the government's talked about a 2020 mission plan to get out 5 to 6 million electric vehicles by 2020. Hopefully, with the new government coming on board, this plan that has been slowed down would come in, and this talks about, I think, a lot on the electric vehicle and hybrid vehicle technology, which would be one of those aspects. I think the solar plant coming in, linking that with electric mobility, will also be a big driver. Today, I think recently, Ford had showcased that how on the roof on a car with a solar concentrator just parked in there for a few hours in a day, you can actually charge your car completely. So the idea of connecting in policy energy would be very important. The third area you've seen in India is the southern grid and the northern grid is being talked about connected together. And actually, India would then have one of the largest grids, connected grids in the world. This, going through a privatization process, going through smart grids, would then enable, I think, the use of energy more efficiently. And if these are to be done, they're going to be driven a lot by software and electronics, which I think is our strength. So I think the policy framework will enable us to do it, and I think the affordability would come through the optimal usage of an asset on an area which is available, and that would kind of give you the cost effectiveness of how we see on this area.
But Chetan, just coming on the cost effectiveness, do you think we need to have, let's say, better subsidies? Because clearly, let's take the Riva, for example. That is still quite expensive compared to conventional cars, and clearly, the technology is still expensive. I think it's a chicken and egg situation. You don't have the volumes really to amortize a lot of the costs, and batteries are still expensive. So, do you think other countries have much better, let's say, fiscal incentives to go towards cleaner cars and even all electric cars? So, do you think that's something that's needed here?
I do believe it's a very big part. I think a great example is looking at Norway. Around 2 years ago, Norway had around 0.5% of all cars sold were electric. Last month, 20% of all cars sold were electric. So 1 in 5 cars are electric. It's common. Your neighbors probably bought one. It's almost things. It's a natural aspect of it, and that's been because of policy driven. The same things happen in a lot of other European countries. So I do believe that to jumpstart new technologies, the policy from the government in form of subsidies, in form of enhanced infrastructure, in form of building the industry and R&D is very critical to, I think, give the jumpstart. China has 100 million electric two-wheelers, manufactures 20 million every year. That's more than the gasoline two-wheelers we make in India. And it's all been driven by policy and a set of subsidies to trigger it. And once it's reached a level of maturity, then you don't need that anymore. So I think the next 5 years, if we're going to really push a jump start on this, we need a long-term policy and definitely driven by consumer subsidies to enable this to happen.
And last question, Chetan, you had also talked about how we have an advantage with our frugal, innate kind of frugal engineering capabilities. I mean, that's really there in our DNA. Do you think this could be a big advantage in, let's say, looking at newer technologies, hybrids, EVs, where really the costs are still very high? How could we really contribute in kind of bringing the costs down?
So, in a new technology car, 75% of the bill of material is batteries and electronics. That means a new different supply chain, a new base. And I think the area where India has a lot of advantage is on areas of software. And let me just give you a simple example. For 2.5 years with the new E2 we launched, we were trying to give a function called hill hold. Typically, this would require expensive ESP systems, hydraulic systems, extra processors, and available typically in cars at 25 to 30 lakhs. But because you're an electric motor and you already had sensing, all you had to do was complex software systems that enable you to create this feature. So no added hardware cost, all software. Now that's, I think, the power of what we have in India. It's about taking software and replacing it with hardware. It's about taking that and creating a functionality that looks at it. So to me, frugalness in the past was about jugaad, looking at putting things together. Frugalness in the future is about smart technologies. It's about the smart integration. It's about the new apps. It's about software being it. And so I think it's the new India kind of frugal engineering.
That's I like that, Chetan. Moving from jugaad of the past to smart technologies of the future. That's really what's going to define, let's say, how we do things in India. I just like to. I don't know if you've got Fahad back on the line, but if we have, we just like to move to him to. Yeah, Fahad. Sorry, you got cut off over there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get back to you.
Okay. Sorry for the technical glitches in Google. Can you all hear me? Is the sound coming?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So when I was I was speaking on DARPA, and we already have aircrafts which are flying on autopilots in air in 3 dimensions, and using navigational equipment on sea. And right now we are exploring opportunities in mobility on land. So autonomous vehicle has been there in our world since like 25 to 30 years. And all this is accumulating to the automotive industry and to the electrical vehicle, which will be used by the common people. What we did recently in our startup is that we did an experiment with a pizza chain store, where instead of transporting humans, we transported material from point A to B and wanted to kind of overtake all the traffic which is available or there in the city of Mumbai. I think so you might have seen in the news where this quad-rotor aircraft kind of takes off from a pizza store and kind of delivers the pizza at a friend's terrace. This is kind of leapfrogging all the traffic jams, all the road signals, and kind of delivering a straight line of sight from point A to B. And this kind of enabled us because it's the same processor technology which is there in our mobile phones, the same GPS sensor, the same accelerometers, the same motor which are used in advanced toys. So we just put this all together and kind of did this experiment. And it's not just transportation of humans, but also transportation of material, which is kind of very important, because 30% of our Earth is covered by land and 70% is water, and the air is like there's no limit to that. So using air as a medium for transportation is going to be a huge thing, and then everyone is kind of waiting for the flying car to come as well. So a driverless car on the road is a stepping stone to the bigger dream of a driverless flying car, which would see in maybe 50 years or 25 years ahead.
Great, yeah, the driverless car. I think everyone waiting for that. But while I'm with you, let me just get stick with you. Now that we've got the connection, is on the driverless car, you think one of the real big issues is really the whole liability thing. I mean, you can have the technology, you can have everything in place, but in the case of an accident, who's liable, that sort of thing. You think from a regulation point, this is really one of the big issues which is being talked about?
Yeah, actually we are questioning the human conscience over here, because whom we should blame that if there is an accident. Is the passenger inside the car who will be responsible for the accident? Is the car which will be responsible for the accident? Or the algorithm the person has written will be responsible for the accident? Exactly. Or the situation where a malfunction will be responsible for the accident? So there's a big question over there which everyone is kind of discussing, that whom will the responsibility ultimately lie on when some things go wrong. So there's yet a debate going on this, and kind of let's see what comes out of it, and how these systems are designed, and how these how these systems work, and how fail-safe systems have been incorporated in a car, and what kind of protocols will the car follow when a situation like this occurs. Will kind of define who will be responsible ultimately. If the system fails, the car. If they did not follow the procedures, maybe the owner. If the maintenance was not done well and the system failed, then maybe the owner again as well. So there has to be, for every individual accident case which might occur in a driverless car, will have to be kind of scrutinized based on the regulations which will be coming in the future for these vehicles.
Great. Yeah, I think that really, I think driverless cars something which I don't think any one of us dreamed of, but clearly a reality. I hope it's not there in my lifetime because I just love driving and can't imagine God taking over from me. But anyway, that's me. I just
Yeah.
want to head back to Akshay again. Managing the whole traffic environment. And you talked about multimodal integration. Now, looking at India, it's complete war zone over there on our road. So really a huge opportunity as well as a challenge. How do you think in our context, this could work?
Yeah, it is a big challenge, Hormaz. I think clearly, with limited road space and accommodating all the different modes within that is a big challenge. But I think the big opportunity is to actually, if you look at the current usage of road space, I think 5 to 10% of people use cars, but the road space is taken over by cars is 70 to 80% of the road space. So I think the big opportunity is to shift a large section of travelers to public transport, so that it becomes more resource efficient in terms of moving people with limited capacity, and that's I think the big opportunity where for the majority of the trips, for example, the daily commute trips, if we have a very good quality public transport system in place, then I'm sure that a lot of people who are currently using cars would be happy to shift to a public transport system, because I think right now a lot of people are using cars or are being forced to use cars because there are no alternatives available. And if you ask them if a good quality public transport system which is integrated and which provides point to point connectivity is available, then a lot of people would be happy to shift. So I think it's both retaining the existing public transport users and also shifting a large section of commuters who are using cars to public transport. In that sense, we'll be able to make it more resource efficient and
Right.
more optimize the travel patterns in our cities.
I also want to talk to you about roads because, clearly in terms of road development, we've just lagged far behind. We've had projects like the Golden Quadrilateral, that's been fantastic. But I just want to ask you a simple question. Is the problem too many cars or is it too few roads? Because, if you cut it that way, the fact is also that we just don't have enough roads and the cars are there. But you go to places like China, Beijing especially, you've got massive 6-lane highways and those are also chock-a-block. But and traffic is worse than it is in India, despite
Yeah.
us having fewer roads. So, Mumbai Pune Expressway, classic example. You had jams 15 years ago, and today you don't have jams despite the multiple increase in traffic. So I just want to touch upon that. Do you think we are not looking at enough roads as well, or is that an issue? It will just kind of propagate more car ownership.
I definitely think so. I think with what the experience of a lot of cities has shown is that the more you build roads, it's going to induce more traffic and eventually, it's going to create congestion again. So I think it's more to do with managing demand than actually increasing supply or capacity. And I think that's clearly something that a lot of experience from other cities has shown us that, if you keep building more urban highways, it's going to induce a lot more car travel in cities, and it's going to create congestion in the end. And also, I think the key point here, which I think Srivatsan also had raised, is that car ownership in the long term is not probably that efficient in terms of resource use, because if you look at the amount of time that you use your car and the amount of time it stays idle, you could move to a car sharing service or even an efficient taxi or rickshaw service where you are paying or using as per your requirement, and you're not actually bound by a car which you're not using. You're ending up owning it, but you're not using it all the time. So in terms of capacity utilization and the fuel use and everything, I think car ownership clearly needs to be thought through again, because if you look at some of the iconic cities in the world, they are clearly trying to manage car usage and car ownership as well. Like for example, Singapore, they have quota system for car ownership. A lot of Chinese cities are moving towards putting limits on the number of cars. London has a congestion pricing system in the city where they price car users who are going into the core part of the city. So I think a lot of cities are moving ahead and thinking of innovative ways to manage car use and car ownership. But in India, I think right now we are in the path of increasing car ownership, and clearly the automotive industry is also banking on that. So I feel that it's going to be a challenge in terms of managing the growth of cars in our cities, given the limited space we have. So we have to think about that again and look at alternative ways of achieving our urban mobility needs.
That leads me actually to Srivatsan. We're talking about reducing congestion through car ownership, and I mean the whole through car sharing. The whole concept of car sharing in India. I mean, do you think it's really realistic, and do you think such a concept really lends itself to some really clever apps which you can really optimize car sharing and generally just reducing congestion?
Sure, Hormazd. I mean, basically we are talking about two things here. One is car sharing and the other one is ride sharing. I'll differentiate the two with the best of my experience. I mean, car sharing is where you have a car that is parked and the car is not owned by any person. It is probably owned by an organization. Let us say, for instance, Mahindra Reva decides to have car sharing, and Reva decides to create like 10 parking spots where you can just go pay like 100 rupees an hour and take a Mahindra Reva, drop it in a different parking spot and just leave. So for point A to point B, you don't need to buy a car or to actually drive around. So that's car sharing, and the other part is ride sharing, which is basically where a person who owns the car drives you around. He basically plays the role of I would not like to call it as a taxi driver, but plays the role of a friend who can take you around. And ride sharing as such is very controversial, plus a very highly raved upon subject. It's controversial because it conflicts the existing structures, the existing taxi rules, taxi laws, and existing taxation laws. Countries throughout the world are charging a heavy licensing fee for people to start making money out of their vehicles. This is, I mean, the origin of this is basically to structure your taxation in such a way that the government makes sufficient money in order to invest in roads and other things. This fundamental, the law and the legal infrastructure needs to change for ride sharing to become more realistic. But having said that, the precedent that Western countries, especially California, the state of California has given us is the people's demand stands above the existing laws. So Californian government is actually in discussion with all these ride-sharing companies, so to say, but not totally forgetting the existing taxi unions, because taxi unions are doing this for a living, ride-sharing maybe for 1 to 2 trips. So the consensus is being searched upon. I'm not sure if we are going to reach the consensus tomorrow, but I'm sure that the systems will evolve to facilitate all these, and probably in the next 1 year or next couple of years, because the taxi as such is an outdated concept if you look at it, because taxis are very expensive and they require a person who needs to be dedicated to that. Plus it increases the ownership. Ola Cabs has done a decent job in India to manage the demand by reusing the existing owners, by not creating more taxis into it. But Ola Cabs, through no direct influence of theirs, will increase the number of cars also. So taxis. So taxis on the whole will be replaced by a more efficient system where people with existing cars will in the near future start giving rights to others and creating a more all-inclusive system, if you want to call.
So Srivatsan, I think I just want to comment on that. Actually, we've started this, and both Zoom and Cars on Rent today, you can actually rent a car online or your smartphone, and in Bangalore and in Delhi, and it probably a couple of hundred rupees for a couple of hours. And I think that's the kind of the thought process of, is India getting ready? And we are seeing a shift. In places like Paris today, where you have 2,500 vehicles, you have around 400 to 500 parking spots around the city. And that's more than the subway station. So probably walking to a point to pick up a car is around 400 meters for you, or 300 meters, and you can pick one up. So I do see the car share capability very high. And if you think of India, for every car there are probably around 25 to 30 people that have driver licenses, which means the capability of having a share mechanism where someone says, I don't need it all the time, or I would love to have a small car during the days. On a weekend, I like a larger car, and once in 3 months, I'd love to have my sports car to have fun on a weekend, allows me to have a set of mobility solutions at a price point that's meaningful. So I really think that in the next 5 years, we're going to see a shift, but it's also going to be a societal shift of people thinking that do I own or do we be part of an ecosystem?
Right, Chetan. I mean, I totally agree to it. I'm not able to remember who exactly told this, but foremost leader in automobile industry, he's actually one of the CXOs of a large automobile company. He said that we are not in the business of manufacturing vehicles anymore. We are in the business of moving people. So I'm sure that you also subscribe to the fact, and that's reflecting through your Zoomcar partnership. People are looking at a transport solution that satisfies their need, and they don't want to invest 3 to 4 lakhs in getting a car and parking it in their parking slot when they actually need it only for 1/10 of the time. So I totally agree, and I too hope, I mean, I'm in that exact same mentality and this exact same mindset, and I too hope that this becomes a reality.
Great.
Chetan, I'd just like to stick to you. Shivasan had talked about dedicated slots for electric vehicles and charging. Now we've seen this in the UK, where your G-Wiz over there, had that. I mean, it was supported that way. Nothing right now for the E2 in India, which is a bit ironic since you make the cars here, and it's a homegrown company. Do you expect such sort of support to come in?
Yeah, the government plan is there. So to take our own initiative, we've actually in Bangalore put up around 120 plug points. And so there is plug points within 5 kilometers of anywhere you are, including airports. We've now introduced fast charging, where in 15 minutes you can get around 25 to 30 kilometers of range, so over a cup of coffee. And I think today globally there are 65,000 charging stations. And this is generally done as public-private partnership. So I'm really looking forward to the government now taking the leadership, while we as a company have done a little bit of how we can commonize this across the country, where if you're going to a coffee shop, you can plug in your car and get a charge, or if you're in a movie theater, you can do it. And it's almost second nature. And with newer technologies like wireless charging coming in and becoming a reality, it wouldn't even require you to plug in. You just move into a parking space, it syncs up with it, it charges your car, and it bills you online, and you don't even realize that you've actually done this. So I do think this is, in the next 3 to 5 years, if the right policy comes in, we could see a strong infrastructure. Because infrastructure here is 3 wires. It's not about putting entire gas tanks or tubes and everything. It's electricity, which is the easiest thing to move around. So the investment in creating an infrastructure is very low compared to probably any other kind of gaseous fuel.
And I just like to move to Shirish talking about again connectivity, like Chetan's been talking about, everyone's been talking about, especially on the infotainment side. There is an issue now of driver distraction, which is really a safety issue. Where do you think this is it becoming a bigger issue as cars get more and more connected? I mean, there's just so much to play around with in the car.
Yeah, I think Hormazd, your point is right. As more and more information is coming to the car, it could lead to scenarios where driver is focusing more on the information than on the road. So it's a big topic of concern. At the same time, the way the technologies are evolving is now we are looking at how to make this more non-intrusive for the driver. In the sense, the human-machine interaction, what happens in terms of, let us say, the driver expecting some action from the vehicle or the safe infotainment. You are now seeing from the traditional button-based interactions to touch-based interactions which are coming in, and also moving towards more of a speech recognition kind of systems which are coming, so that your focus is on the road, but still you can use other means to communicate with the car through voice commands. That is on the rise. In terms of the information content coming to the driver, so you're also seeing new systems in terms of not the traditional infotainment system fixed in the center of the dash, but more and more systems like head-up displays, which gives you augmented reality kind of a view blended into your windscreens of what is going to come, packed with relevant information, not crowding it, but then which is of meaning to the user, so that the main focus of the driver is on the road and on the driving rather than the secondary information which is coming for him. And you'll also see more and more evolution of technologies in terms of how these can be more and more automated, so that the driver intervention is becoming less and lesser. And that's why we're talking of the autonomous cars stuff. And where the only thing, so there won't be perhaps anything called a driver coming into the place. The moment you walk out of the house, your vehicle would know where you want to go, depending on either your history or your behavior, or in the simplest forms, syncing up with your calendar, saying your next meeting is here, and it is going to take you automatically there. The only thing you need to do is perhaps to begin with, say I want to go here, and then the rest of the ride is taken care of you. So the whole emphasis on application of technologies is to reduce more and more this kind of a distraction for the driver or the user of the vehicle here.
Yeah, so I think quite clearly, just to sum up, I think these new technologies, the car of the future, really tackling the three, what I would call the unholy trinity of cars. That's road safety, cars cause a lot of deaths, congestion, and pollution. But before we take questions from, a lot of people have asked us questions. Chetan, I want to come back to you and just broadly ask you on one thing. We haven't done too badly as a nation. I mean, we're terrible on, let's say, the safety part of it. We have the maximum number of road deaths in India. But on pollution and congestion, 80% of our cars are actually small cars, and they're actually fuel-efficient cars. Now, it's not because consumers love planet Earth. It's just because the economics make it that way. I mean, you see the largest selling cars in China, for example, are 3-box cars. I mean, here our cars are really compact. So I don't think the auto industry has done too badly as is, but, it's purely consumer-driven. So what's your take on that?
Well, I think as an industry, if you're growing 10 to 20%, then your emission regulations and requirements need to drop far lower than that. And that's, I think, if we were the West growing at 1%, then you could say, yeah, it comes in. So we have to have a far more dramatic change. We cannot be saying we reduce emissions by 5% or 10%. If we're going at that level, we have to say, how do we get to a zero emission level? And I think that's going to be the big issue for the industry. And given the fact we have smaller cars, given the fact they're more city-centric, here I think electrics can play a much larger role. And with the right infrastructure, with the right ecosystem on solar energy, we can talk about it being clean. So while I think the industry's done well in creating a small car hub, making them even more lightweight, getting in even more cleaner technologies, I think would be the next step for the industry.
And with that, Chetan, I'd like you to take the first question from, a lot of people have written in. This is from Pratyush Nalam. His question is, when can we expect petrol-powered cars to disappear, replaced by cleaner ones, of course? I'm sure that's your dream, but you think there's a time frame, or I think that's really still up in the air. But it will happen eventually.
Yeah, I think what I've seen in Norway in the last 2 years has been amazing. To get a number of 20% in any country is phenomenal. And I think India could see a 10 to 15% number if the policy goes well by 2020. And I do believe that by 2025, there will be some sort of electrification, maybe smaller and hybridization in some cars, on almost every vehicle on the road, with a large portion of it being pure electric.
Great. And our next question is from Murari Bhartia. He's got a problem with parking. He wants to know, is traffic parking guidance system, are they achievable on every vehicle in the near future? He wants to know how intelligent roads will be to accommodate such traffic in coming years. And can vehicles be squeezed on a push of a button so that they can be fitted into a parking zone. So clearly, he wants the car to park himself. I think Fahad, maybe that's. I'd like to toss that to you because you've been, with robotics, you've been looking at autonomous cars. So here's a question for you.
Yeah, automated parking vehicle is already there. So rather than the car drives itself to the parking slot, or you just put a car in the parking building, and the whole building manage the parking of the car. So you just need to call the car, and these systems are already available in malls in India. And for a system where the person who's asked the question is, you just drop off the car from the place you've got off, and the car drives and finds a parking space. So this is more on the big data technology which is there, cloud computing, where all the empty car spaces which are available, the car kind of finds that space, goes there, and parks itself. And when the driver comes back from whatever he's done, and then kind of call the cars back, and the car comes to him. So this technology is available in fragments, but has not been implemented in the automotive sector as per se right now. But it is possible to do this, and for cars to compress and kind of squeeze up in small parking space. So there's a lot of effort being done in Japan, especially by Toyota and Honda, where they kind of trying to see how these cars kind of disassemble and assemble for parking space, especially with the electric vehicles. This is possible because the kind of power plant size reduces so much that it gives capabilities for the cars to change its shape.
Do you think in India probably it's more of a challenge because you've got very unpredictable traffic movement. There's not proper lane markings for the guidance systems of the cars to follow that sort of thing. So,
No.
How realistic do you think it is?
It's quite realistic because the kind of sensors which are available to kind of map the environment around you need not require any marking systems or any references for you to kind of go and find a parking spot. So something like an Xbox which is already there in everyone's house. So there are more advanced sensors which kind of map the entire area around you. So there's something known as SLAM, which is simultaneous localization and mapping, which is used in Google cars and a lot of other systems. So the sensors which will kind of decide whether this is possible or not if it is integrated in the car.
But the other issue is it's a bit regulatory because it's quite interesting. Mercedes-Benz, they've just launched the S-Class, and abroad they've got this magic body control system which is radar-based. Now in India they couldn't bring that because that radar frequency was not allowed, wasn't security cleared. So that was quite a unique issue that's come up. So do you think this could be a problem because certain radar-based systems, they're just not being allowed over here?
So this technology which I've been speaking about, you don't need any radar. So it's something like a scanner which is scanning using laser-guided laser technology and generating 3D maps on the go. So it's not interfering with any frequencies or not interfering with any band which is there in the government regulation. So it's a completely independent system which will kind of use 3D mapping technology using sensors and gathering data. So it won't even require references for itself to kind of guide. So everything will be on board. So this is possible today.
Okay. Great.
It's not yet implemented though.
Right. Great. We've got a question from Tushar Katria. Chetan, this one's for you. He's saying considering 62% of oil imports consumed by two-wheelers use intracity, how about making a sexy electric motorbike? Now, Mahindras have got a two-wheeler division. They've got you, the father of electric mobility in India. So surely something must be on the cards there.
Yeah, at a group level, I think it's considered very important. In the US, Mahindra has a Gen Z, which is a product that they showcased recently, which is a pretty cool-looking commuter bike for college students.
Recently, the Gen Z.
Yeah, and so I think that's there, and I'm sure over time we will work on some things like India. I think the nice thing about the group is got everything from 2 wheels to 16 wheels, so a lot of electrification possibilities.
Great. Well, again, a lot of interest in autonomous cars, and Murari Bhatia, again, he's written in. He wants to know, can an autonomous car be controlled from a handheld device? So I think that's probably it can be, but if anyone wants to just elaborate on that.
I think the autonomous vehicle by handheld device is very easy. It's almost a remote control car. Cars have power steering, which you can use on this area, and most cars have ESP systems and enable you to probably brake and accelerator, and most of these cars today are drive-by-wire. So that's all about sensing that you have today and attaching a small camera to see what's ahead of you. Very easy to do on your Android device. It would be something like you have these drone aircrafts that you can pick up for a couple of $100s. It's a similar electronics that would go in. So I think the part of having it done on a smartphone or something is very easy. I think the part of it being autonomous and having its own intelligence is a much bigger challenge.
Great. Well, shifting tack a bit, we've forgotten about our most basic two-wheeler, which is the pedal bike. I think we are the largest market for it. So we've got a question here. Is that what would it take to develop bicycle tracks on all roads so that bicycles can turn mainstream? So I think this is quite an interesting question. So, if anyone of the panelists want to take this.
Okay, being an avid cycler, I think that's a great idea, and I think as an opportunity of where we're getting metros and other aspects, I think during this new infrastructure being set up in cities, we could put something as cycle lanes. There are a few in Bangalore already, and it's making a difference. Also, there are several spots in Bangalore where you can actually rent a bicycle from Bangalore Club, others by putting a smart card. And I think you already have this basic bicycle share area. As more people do it, I think we need to put pressure on the government to make it happen and give some space out there for cycling. It's probably the right thing, both from our health and probably from reducing some more emissions.
I want to bring Akshay into this. Akshay, I think you've got something to say. Is this part of the whole multimodal transport integration?
Yes, I think definitely, Hormazd, and as Chetan mentioned, promoting bike sharing and cycling as a whole is going to be a critical part of sustainable mobility, because not just from the emissions perspective, but even physical activity and the cost angle of mobility. I think cycling and walking as non-motorized modes of transport need to be promoted. And what has happened in New York City, for example, under Michael Bloomberg's administration, they implemented around 200 to 300 kilometers of bicycle lanes in the city, and totally the city has transformed itself, and so much has happened even with the pedestrianization of Times Square. So a lot of cities are promoting non-motorized transport, walking and cycling, and I think it's definitely part of the mix of sustainable urban transport. So I totally second that, and we definitely need to move forward in promoting cycling as well.
Hormazd, a few points I'd like to add here is I do agree in terms of the overall initiative, the empowerment or more encouragement for the bikes is required. But if you look at the scenarios in which if you say it's promoting health, but the moment the bicycle is going on the main street where there are so many vehicles, first thing is it's very risky from the safety aspect for the bike rider. Second thing is also when you talk of a health, there are so many emissions happening from the parallel vehicles which are coming in. And looking at the terrains of different cities which are there could be hilly areas, there could be things like that, which perhaps that's what is a basic barrier for people adopting more and more bicycles. Perhaps added dimension that if these bikes can be electrified, to the extent that you don't have to spend so much of effort in riding those, but it is augmented with some kind of battery and a motor, not to the tune of an electric bike, but then some kind of additional power which comes to you. I think that is something which could topple or completely turn around the scenario of how many more bikes are used on the road. Plus, of course, the infrastructure aspect which come across in terms of having dedicated lanes. Today, if you see in Bangalore, Chetan, you would agree with that most of the bicycle lanes which have been marked, they're used for parking. And it also depends on the people who have to adopt this, who have to accept this. So it's a two-way street, what I see here.
Yeah.
But Shirish, electrifying bikes, there'd be a huge cost to that, and quite frankly, that would be quite unrealistic. The point is, it's the staple form of transport in many tier two, tier three cities. So really, one needs to cater for that as well. And I think that's where Akshay was talking about that.
Yeah, see the cost part of it, yes. I mean, if you're looking at a bicycle within, let us say, within the 2 kilometer range, yes, a manual ride is good. But if you're looking at 2 to 5 kilometers kind of a commute over a bicycle, then if you look at the cost of the technology which is coming on the bicycles per se to electrify it is not as comparable to the electric two-wheelers. And in the Western world, they already started adopting this. And the more the volumes come in, I think the cost of the technology will further go down. So perhaps if a bike is costing for you 2,000-3,000 today, we can think of another 50% on top of this. But then the convenience that you get out of it is much more meaningful out of it.
Right. We're really running out of time, and I just want to take one last question, which is from Anjana. It's a very broad question and a very obvious question, but I'd really like to get each panelist's point of view on this. Just very short point on this. Are Indian roads infrastructure ready for the future of mobility? Now, clearly the answer is no. But the question is, do you think this will be the ultimate drag on moving into the future with connected cars, increasing safety, that sort of thing? So, Akshay, let me start with you on this point. Basically, the infrastructure, and really, is that fundamentally the one single biggest bottleneck, or is it policy, or is it something else?
I would say that definitely if we have all the different pieces in place, the political will and the policy, the finance, the technology is definitely there. It's all about how do we best manage our resources, and clearly, with the available capacity that we have in our cities, with the available road space. One thing is to make sure that what road space we have is of high quality and it's maintained. But at the same time, managing demand given the existing road space is going to be the most critical part of it. And with promoting public transport and promoting walking and cycling, so infrastructure for all these key modes of transport, I think we'll be able to best manage our demand and utilize the existing capacity. And clearly, I think the role of the car is important, but we have to again think about what is the best role that cars have in our cities, and how does it interplay with the other modes of transport, and the other piece of also the shared mobility services, taxis and rickshaws and car sharing. I think again I'll come back to the aspect of multimodal integration and how all the modes work together, with public transport being the backbone and also walking and cycling being important part of the mobility solution. I think if each of our cities really work in that direction, we'll be able to best manage our resources and really achieve our vision of sustainable urban transport in cities. And clearly, I think what we are working on at Embark India is also helping cities achieve that reality. Working to promote public transport and walking and cycling. So I think it's clearly something that's happening, and I'm hopeful that a lot more initiatives will be undertaken in this regard.
Fahad, I jump to you. Autonomous cars, more robotization. Clearly, infrastructure, the key point. I mean, is that the most critical issue for to have advances in this?
Yeah, that's definitely the key point, because if the infrastructure is not available and the policies are not being followed, it will become more complex for the engineers or the automotive manufacturers to kind of make these cars to be capable of moving autonomously. So as a guy from Bombay, what I've seen is that on your footpath you have your shops, and because of lack of space on the footpath, people start walking on the parking lane. And as people are walking on the parking lane, the second lane is used for parking. So the only lane which is used for moving is the fastest lane. So what happens that because of that, there's so much of congestion, then movement of traffic is very difficult. And you have people walking on the road, people walking with the cars. So that kind of infrastructure and the policies which the government is not able to implement will make it very difficult for making autonomous cars to move in this environment.
Shivatsan, coming to you, do you think infrastructure, I mean, as the question we got from one of the viewers is that is this really fundamentally, is it down to this?
Hormazd, I mean, yes and no. Yes, infrastructure in India is little poor compared to the other countries, but I still feel that India has its own way around. I mean, India, when Tesla makes a big car, Mahindra makes a small car. India finds its own way around, and I'm sure that there are workarounds. There are ways by which you can make technology work even in a system which lacks infrastructure. So I would love to see the country evolve its infrastructure overall, but I don't think that this is a game. This is a breaker. I mean, I don't think this is a showstopper.
Right.
I think the spirit of entrepreneurship should still manage to make the society change overall.
Right. So, Mr. Bachu, is this? So, would you agree with this? That that's a very interesting point Srivatsan has made. Is that, and I think we've seen it at all. We've had really a lack of infrastructure. Public sector hasn't really lived up to a lot of promises in a lot of things. I mean, even quality of fuel, for example. Today we are meeting emission standards with really a fuel quality which is really not up to international standards, for example. So do you think innovation in India will really override some of the infrastructural challenges we have?
Yeah, I do agree to a certain extent with what Srivatsan said in terms of, as in India, we are quite resourceful and we find ways and means to meet our end needs. So if it comes to the extent that we have to push technology into the existing limited infrastructure what we have, we'll find ways and means. The only challenge there is it becomes complex in such a kind of a scenario. And if you look at the current urban infrastructure, the way the road networks and things are there, they have been historically there. They have not been designed for this kind of a bust which has happened. But I'm very positive with the kind of a concept which is coming in terms of satellite townships, which are well planned ahead, and the infrastructure is also planned well ahead. So there will be two contrasting set of things what we're going to see. So there are already facilitated infrastructure which is going to come in place. At the same time, in the limited infrastructure, we'll have technological solutions or innovations which are driving, bringing in more kind of solutions to meet the public needs. So I think we are headed in a very positive route here.
And Chetan, last word to you on the infrastructure issue, especially with EVs, which you've been pursuing for the last nearly 20 years now. Do you think it's a huge challenge, or you think you can manage to work your way around it?
Well, I think from a pure electric vehicle perspective, charging infrastructure and in future battery swapping stations are going to form an important aspect, which I think are very critical to be of an infrastructure of a city. But taking on the fact that, we keep saying our roads are the problem, look at the opportunity on it. In the city, I don't think we're going to make too many changes given where we already are. And so therefore, how do we optimally use what we have today? And here is where I think India has a large opportunity based on our capabilities in software area. If everything from traffic patterns, if everything from metro timings, if everything from bus timings, if understanding where bike lanes are, we're all in a system which is available for cities developed. Think of the Android platform for a city, and everyone could access it. Then what you do is you optimize the resources in a city. If a car share can remove 8 cars, one car can remove 8 cars, that's great. If someone says, I could use multimodal transportation and get from point A to point B quicker, and I know what a million other people in the city are doing, and in real time I can compute that, then I can use the same resources. So for us, our strategy in cities where we're going to be stuck with the current infrastructure for a while, because it's about us living together with this, it's about how can we optimize it to make living much easier and much cleaner. And there I think is an opportunity very unique for us in India.
Thanks, Chetan. And actually, on that note, I'd like to end this session. Clearly, we do have our challenges. Infrastructure is a challenge, but in the true spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship, the ways to work around these challenges and, in fact, make them into big opportunities. So, thanks everyone for joining us. A real pleasure. Really great takeaways from this session. And I'd just like to say that if you'd like to hear more, you can make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. And if you're interested in learning more about the Rise Prize, just check out sparktherise.com. Thank you.
Thank you.